Do you think in the future prices will go up or down? Do you think there will be more resources or fewer? Do you think the future will be better for people or for the elites? It takes 20 years to prepare for the next phase of a cycle, and the decline has begun in everything: food scarcity, energy scarcity, metal scarcity, oil, and even water scarcity. So, prepare yourself and your loved ones because winter is coming. This is Google Podcasters judging my membership video on, well, you already know the title. In this video, the podcasters will dissect and judge my video from the form to the core of the message. Just remember this: if you're struggling to keep up with rising costs and dwindling resources, you're not alone. The elites are tightening the noose, and it's time to fight back by making every minute, action, and dollar count. This isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving in a world designed to keep us down. The goal of this podcast? To review, judge, and give you a glimpse of what I prepare for my special members. My intentions are to help you take control of your life, optimize your daily habits, and prepare for the scarcity that's coming. You'll learn the hard truths about why efficiency isn't just a choice, it's a necessity. Stay until the end. You will like it. Ready to turn chaos into control? Let's get started.
All right, so buckle up because this deep dive, well, let's just say it's a bit different.
Different, good, or different? We're heading off the map here.
Yeah, little column A, little column B. You guys submitted this K Waterloo, and wow, intense,
I
much.
was going to say, the energy practically crackles off the page. Like finding an old survival manual, from like the Cold War. Part of you's like, come on, but then what if they were right?
Exactly, and that's what we're diving into today. So, to catch everyone up, K Waterloo, whoever they are, has this whole theory, let's call it, about how the world's power structures are shifting.
And not shifting in the way we usually think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about politicians or CEOs anymore.
Nope. K Waterloo's got this whole breakdown of elites, 5 categories to be exact. We're talking knowledge, finance, the usual suspects, but then it gets interesting. We're talking spiritual leaders, even like philosophers or something, anyone who shapes how people think.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yes.
But if they're talking about a power shift, who's taking over? Aliens. AI uprising.
You're gonna laugh. Sus.
Us. Like the listeners right now.
Yep. K Waterloo calls us the educated and awakened masses, which, I gotta say, kudos to us for achieving that. But, and this is a big but, they don't think we're ready to take the reins.
Ooh. Harsh, but also kind of makes you think like, okay, let's say for a second all the systems really are on the verge of collapse. Are we actually equipped to deal with that?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And K Waterloo doesn't pull any punches. They basically say, we're sleepwalking towards disaster, too busy arguing about Twitter to learn how to, build a fire or something.
It's that classic knowing versus doing gap blown up to a societal scale. And they're not wrong, are they? I mean, think about how many people freak out when the Wi-Fi is down for 5 minutes.
No kidding. So, do we all need to become survivalists now? Is that what K Waterloo wants? Everyone ditch their smartphones for a plow and a mule?
Not quite, but they do get surprisingly down to earth with their advice. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. We're talking kitchens, toolboxes, even how we buy clothes.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here, but spell it out for us. What do those things have to do with, global power shifts?
It's about autonomy. K Waterloo links seemingly mundane tasks, like, say, fixing a leaky faucet or cooking a meal from scratch, to this idea of reducing our reliance on systems that, let's face it, can and do fail.
I'd like that line of theirs, bringing a butter knife to a gunfight.
Exactly. Little dramatic, maybe. But it gets the point across. They're saying we've become so reliant on others to do even the most basic things for us that we're completely outmatched when those systems fail.
And we're not talking about surviving a zombie apocalypse here. We're talking about everyday life. Like, what happens when the power goes out, the grocery store shelves are empty, or, God forbid, you can't just call a plumber for a leaky pipe?
Right. And look, I get it. Not everyone has the time, skills, or even the resources to fix everything themselves. Life's complicated.
Which is, I'm guessing, where this whole Spartan thing comes in. Because I doubt K Waterloo expects us all to start wearing togas and battling gladiators or whatever.
No, thankfully no togas. But the Spartan analogy is more about adopting a certain mindset, a commitment to resourcefulness and resilience, even in small, everyday ways.
Okay, so it's less about building a bunker and more about building inner strength, self-sufficiency.
Exactly. It's about recognizing where we've become overly reliant on others and then taking small, practical steps to reclaim some of that agency.
I like it. It's like empowering yourself one leaky faucet at a time. But K. Waterloo doesn't stop there, do they? They've got this whole other layer to their philosophy, almost like a counterintuitive twist, this whole thing about nudging.
And this is where things get really interesting. They argue that true preparedness goes beyond just the physical stuff, beyond the skills and resources. It's about cultivating the mental and emotional resilience to navigate uncertainty. And that's where nudging comes in.
Okay, before we get too far ahead, let's unpack this whole nudging thing, because I have a feeling it's key to understanding K. Waterloo's whole deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, K. Waterloo argues that we're constantly being nudged by systems, by everything from marketing to social media algorithms, to behave in certain ways, to consume more, to depend on certain structures. But they believe we can consciously nudge ourselves toward more self-reliance and autonomy.
So instead of being passive recipients of these external forces, we can actively choose to engage with them differently or even opt out entirely.
Precisely. And that's where things get really interesting.
So, last we left off, we were neck deep in this whole nudging concept. K. Waterloo wants us to be aware of how these subtle influences, these systems, are shaping our lives, and then what? Fight back.
Yeah, it's almost like they're saying we can hack the system, but this time we're hacking it for our own benefit, for our own freedom.
Right. But hacking implies a certain level of, skill, knowledge. How do we actually nudge ourselves in the right direction? Where do we even begin?
You're hitting on a really crucial point because awareness is only half the battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to notice those nudges, those little pushes toward dependence, but it's a whole other thing to actually change our behavior, to break free from those patterns. And this, I think, is where K. Waterloo's connection to the crypto world comes in.
Oh, yeah, right. Before we got sidetracked by nudging, we were about to tackle their thoughts on crypto. They seem to think it's the answer to, everything.
Let's just say K. Waterloo's views on crypto are passionate. They go deep, maybe a little too deep for our purposes today. But I think what's really interesting here isn't so much about whether Bitcoins go to the moon or any of that. It's how they tie crypto back to this bigger idea of self-reliance.
Okay, so less about the tech itself and more about what it represents.
Exactly. For K. Waterloo, crypto represents a way to potentially, and I emphasize potentially, opt out of traditional financial systems. Systems that they believe are, let's just say, not exactly designed with our best interests in mind.
Right, like that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially when you're not even sure who's holding the basket, right?
Precisely. And look, I'm not saying everyone needs to run out and invest in cryptocurrency tomorrow, but I think K. Waterloo's underlying point is a valid one. It's about diversifying, exploring different avenues for managing our finances, gaining more control over our own economic well-being. It's one tool among many for building that much-needed resilience in an increasingly uncertain world.
Okay, so it's less about crypto being some magic bullet and more about taking back control, becoming less reliant on systems that may not always have our best interests at heart.
Now you're getting it. And this idea, this need for control, for self-reliance, it extends far beyond just our finances, at least according to K. Waterloo. They argue that we've become overly dependent on systems in general for our food, our energy, the information we consume, everything. And this dependence, this vulnerability, it's not doing us any favors.
Okay, so I see how this nudging concept ties in. K. Waterloo wants us to wake up, see how these systems are subtly shaping our lives, often without us even realizing it. But then what? Are we all supposed to become modern-day homesteaders? Ditch our smartphones for pitchforks and live off the land?
Hold your horses, city slicker. It's not quite that extreme. It's about finding a balance. K. Waterloo isn't advocating for a complete and utter rejection of all systems, but rather a more conscious, more intentional way of engaging with them. It's about recognizing those areas where we become overly reliant and then taking small practical steps to reclaim some of that lost agency.
So less about burning it all down and much about strategically rearranging the furniture.
That's a good way to put it. And the key here is strategic. It's about figuring out where those nudges are leading us, those subtle influences that keep us comfortable, but maybe a little too complacent, and then making conscious choices to nudge ourselves in a different direction.
So what? We just wake up one morning and decide, today I'm going to nudge myself towards self-reliance. How does that actually play out in real life?
Well, it's less about making some grand sweeping declaration and more about those small everyday choices. Think of it like this. Instead of automatically ordering takeout after a long day, maybe you nudge yourself to cook a simple meal at home, Or instead of passively scrolling through social media for hours, maybe you nudge yourself to read a book, learn a new skill, connect with a loved one.
Okay, so it's about those little moments of awareness, those tiny decisions we make throughout the day that can slowly shift us towards more self-reliance, more autonomy.
You got it. It's about breaking those deeply ingrained patterns of dependence that we often take for granted. It's about questioning the easy way, the convenient way, and asking ourselves, is this choice truly serving me, or is it just keeping me comfortable, keeping me complacent?
It's about taking back control, becoming the authors of our own lives, not just passive characters in someone else's narrative.
Now you're talking. And the more we do that, the more we cultivate that resilience that Kay Waterloo keeps coming back to. It's not about becoming invincible, immune to life's challenges, but about having the skills, the resources, and most importantly, the mindset to adapt, to overcome, to thrive, no matter what life throws our way.
But Kay Waterloo doesn't just leave us with these broad ideas, right? They wouldn't be Kay Waterloo if they didn't have some concrete suggestions for putting these principles into practice.
Oh, I knew they wouldn't disappoint. So what's the Kay Waterloo game plan? How do we actually build this resilient life they keep talking about? Give us the highlights.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Elites, prepping, nudging ourselves toward freedom. But let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
What does Kay Waterloo actually want us to do with all this? They've gotten us good and worried, but do they offer any solutions, or is it just panic and despair?
Well, that's the thing about Kay Waterloo. They're not just about doom and gloom. They love to shake things up, challenge our assumptions, but they also offer a path forward, a way to navigate the chaos they see coming. And you're right, they get surprisingly specific about how we can actually build more resilient lives.
Okay, so no more vague pronouncements about embracing the unknown or whatever. Give us the Kay Waterloo crash course in self-sufficiency. Where do we even begin?
Remember that whole Spartan analogy they're so fond of? It's not about literally donning sandals and battling gladiators.
Thank goodness for that, although a little hand-to-hand combat training never hurt anyone.
True. But what Kay Waterloo is really getting at is this idea of cultivating that same Spartan spirit of resourcefulness, that ability to adapt and overcome challenges with whatever's at hand.
Okay, so we're channeling our inner warrior, even if we live in a world of takeout menus and ride-sharing apps. Got it. But how do we actually do that?
Well, they break it down into a few key areas. First and foremost, practical skills. Kay Waterloo is convinced that we become far too reliant on experts for things that our ancestors handled as a matter of course.
Right, like knowing how to change a tire or bake a loaf of bread. Lost arts, I tell ya.
Exactly. So they're all about reclaiming those essential life skills, basic home repair, gardening, even simple sewing and mending.
So it's about embracing our inner homesteader, even if we're stuck in a tiny apartment with no outdoor space.
Precisely. It's about taking back those areas where we've become overly reliant on others, not just because it makes us more self-sufficient, but because it gives us a sense of accomplishment, of control over our own lives. There's a certain satisfaction, a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can fix a leaky faucet or whip up a delicious meal from scratch.
Okay, I'm with you. What else is on Kay Waterloo's self-sufficiency checklist?
Financial preparedness is huge for them. We talked about their, shall we say, enthusiastic views on crypto.
Their love affair with Bitcoin knows no bounds. But they do make some interesting points, even if you're not ready to go all in on digital currency.
Exactly. And to be fair to Kay Waterloo, they also stress more traditional financial advice like budgeting, diversifying income streams, and maybe having some physical assets like precious metals. It's about not keeping all your eggs in one basket, as they say.
That's a good point. And it's interesting because I know people who are super into prepping, stockpiling supplies, that kind of thing, and then others who are obsessed with investing, diversifying their portfolios. Kay Waterloo seems to blend those worlds together, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes their perspective so unique, so valuable. They're not just preaching to the prepper choir. They're trying to bridge this gap between preparing for worst-case scenarios and building a more resilient life overall.
So whether you're worried about the collapse of civilization as we know it, or just want to be a little more financially secure, a little more in control of your own destiny, Kay Waterloo's advice has some surprising crossover appeal.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, it's all about recognizing that financial stability equals freedom. It equals options. And that message resonates whether you're bracing for a major crisis or just trying to navigate the ups and downs of everyday life.
Okay, so we've got practical skills, financial savvy. What else is in Kay Waterloo's toolkit for building a truly resilient life?
This is the part that I think might surprise some people. For all their talk about self-reliance, about individual empowerment, K. Waterloo is adamant that we're not meant to do this alone. They're huge advocates for building strong local communities, sharing skills and resources, supporting those around us.
So it's less about becoming a lone wolf, holed up in a bunker with a year's supply of freeze-dried food, and more about prepping with pals.
Exactly. K. Waterloo understands that true resilience isn't just about individual preparedness. It's about collective action, mutual support, knowing that you have people you can rely on when things get tough.
It's a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels so divided, so isolating. It's like they're saying, yeah, the systems might be failing us, but we can build something better, something stronger together.
And that, I think, is the ultimate takeaway from K. Waterloo. It's not just about surviving the collapse, the crisis, the unknown. It's about using this moment of potential upheaval as a springboard to create a more resilient, more self-sufficient, and yes, more interconnected future. One where we're not just passive consumers, but active participants in shaping the world around us.
So, is K. Waterloo a doom and gloom prophet warning us of impending disaster? Or are they visionaries pushing us towards a better, more resilient way of being in the world? I think they're a little bit of both.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And whether you buy into their whole shtick or not, I think K. Waterloo forces us to confront some really important questions about our relationship with the systems we inhabit, our own agency, and the kind of future we're creating, both individually and collectively.
Well said. And on that note, for those of you feeling inspired to maybe learn how to change a tire or bake a loaf of bread from scratch, or even just strike up a conversation with your neighbor, remember, it's about taking small, manageable steps. It's about progress, not perfection.
And who knows? You might just discover a hidden talent for gardening or forge a new friendship that makes your community a little bit stronger.
And even if they don't share all my views and missed understanding 1 or 2 points of the video made specially for our premium community members, I have to say the podcaster did an admirable job. Now, knowing that more independent from the system you are and less money you need to spend, you've got 2 choices. Either stay without full control over your life, or join the Spartan tribe and take the reins of your future. You might think you've learned a bit from this video, but believe me, there's so much more beneath the surface. Our exclusive membership includes videos packed with explosive, actionable solutions that will definitely make a difference for you and your community. While the rest of the world is struggling with chaos, you'll be the one thriving. But if you're not quite ready, take a look at my other videos and playlists. And before you do that, I'm really eager to hear what you liked the most about this video. Do you have any questions? Here's one from me. What do you want more of? Money, time, or both? And would you rather have it later or sooner? Most people looking for these advantages end up liking, subscribing, and crucially, joining us to become executive members. If you decide not to join, you might just find your bank account slowly dwindling. So, what's your next move? Hit that subscribe button, become an executive member, and tap into knowledge that sets you apart from the crowd. The real question is, do you merely want to survive, or do you aim to dominate? Remember, the weak will fall, but the prepared will thrive. Click to join now.